Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Nye Jones. She is the author of Dressed in Peace. I am really excited to have Nye on the show. This is an important conversation. It's an important conversation about differences, about diversity, about race. But it's really fun. And I really love it when we can tackle difficult subjects, deep, meaty subjects, important subjects, and still have fun. That's been my life. And that's why I feel so blessed that I've been able to present educational magic shows that deal with some really, really important topics in fun, magical kind of ways. And I'm really excited that right now, because of the pandemic and the quarantine, and because of the fact that schools, we don't know what school is going to be like when it reopens in the fall. If it's going to reopen in the fall. We don't know if it's going to reopen in September or January. We don't know if it reopens, if it will be like it was before, if kids will be going 1 or 2 days a week and Zooming the rest of the week, or if they're in school, if they're going to be able to come out of their classrooms for any kind of enrichment programs. And that's why I've taken on the challenge to transform my show from a live stage show that kids would experience in their auditorium to a show that they'll experience via technology like Zoom. And I'm really excited that I'm having so much fun with it. I've been presenting some shows via Zoom, and it really is a lot of fun, and it's surprisingly interactive. And one of the things that I love, and I've said this for years and years and years, the thing that's so cool about my show is while the kids have to look at me, I get to look at them, and I get to look at their smiles. Well, through the magic of Zoom, I'm not looking at smiles that are 50 or 100 or 500 feet away from me, depending on how big of the audience is. I'm looking at smiles that are right in front of me on a screen, just inches away from me. And those smiles let me know that those kids are just as amazed at the magic, and they're just as touched by the message, whether it's coming through Zoom or coming live on stage. I want to invite you to visit my website, wewillroar.com, and ROAR stands for Respect Others and Read. Talking to kids about being kind and respectful to every single person they meet. And to always make sure that they find time every single day to read, because reading, not only does it help us to develop a love of learning, it also helps us develop a love and understanding of other people, like we'll be talking about with our guest today. So please, if you have a moment, check it out, wewillroar.com. Join us on the line right now from the United Kingdom. She is an author. She is a publisher. She's the author of a fantastic book called Dressed in Peace, and I love that title. Please welcome to the show, Nye Jones. Nye, how are you?
I'm great this evening. Thank you for having me, Jed.
I'm really, really excited to have you on, especially in this moment in history. We're recording this in the middle of June. The United States has experienced a couple weeks of protest, righteous protest, in the wake of the murder of Mr. George Floyd. And this is an incident that it's a crime that has really kind of swept the world and really caught up people all over the world. And it's mobilized a lot of people of all different races to come together and to stand up and say, we're done with this. We need to create that world that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke about 50 years ago. And that people have been waiting centuries for, a world where everybody has a chance to live dressed in peace. And that's why the title of your book really captured my heart and excited me. So why don't we start by telling us about the book and what inspired you to write Dressed in Peace?
Okay, so Dressed in Peace is my second baby. It's the first book I ever wrote, but it was inspired by my firstborn child. And when I first gave birth to my son, one of the things that I decided was to move away from the city area in which I'd grown up to try and offer him kind of more broader opportunities than those that were available to me in my childhood. But one of the things that was quickly made aware to me, or was a huge shock to the system, was the demographic and the cultural demographic that moving 30 minutes away from the city had brought about. So in the area that I live in, it's a predominantly white area, and my son is one of only 3 black children in his entire school. And when we first started the school, people were very, very nice to us, very open-minded, but my son did receive a lot of questions from his peers about the colour of his skin, about the texture of his hair. My son has dreadlocks, so they would ask a lot of questions about his hair and why it was like that and why he doesn't eat certain foods. And the school often had kind of asked me, is there anything that you could kind of bring in and introduce to the young people here that will help kind of raise that cultural awareness amongst them? So I went back home and I looked in the bookshelf at all the cultural books that we had available to us. And one of the things that I found is that they were so heavily embedded with images that represented my son and none that actually represented his peers, that actually bringing in those books, I felt at the time, would have created a bigger divide and wouldn't allow them to see the likeness, which is what I'm sure the school wanted me to kind of portray to the children, is that although these are his differences, the unity amongst them all. And that is really what had inspired the story Dressed in Peace. And the idea of it was that it was an opportunity for us to showcase the beauty and the cultural diversities of each religion side by side and actually see that they all have exactly the same message, which in essence is peace and love, and is the reason that I named the book Dressed in Peace, because although I might look different to you and it might be a little bit shocking, the way that I'm dressed is actually my way of representing the peace that my culture represents. And it's literally how the book had come about.
What a beautiful beginning for a book. I love it. Now, one of the things, when I was growing up, I did grow up in a predominantly white neighborhood, but we did have folks that were different religions, and it was really small, so we did have contact with a lot of other people. But one of the things that I was taught, and it was rammed into my head, is if you saw somebody who looked different, don't stare, don't ask questions. That's rude. You don't want to make some... It sounds to me like you appreciated the fact that the school wanted to know more about your son and about your culture, to bring about that understanding, to take away that the fear that sometimes the unknown can generate.
And that's exactly the inspiration behind the book. It was the fact that I find that fear comes from a place of not knowing. So the more I could let you know about myself, and also the more you could relate to that knowledge, because it's all well and good you knowing about the history, but if you aren't able to identify with parts of the story, then it can often go over your head. So the idea was to remove that fear of the unknown. This is who we are. This is what we represent. And this is also what makes us a lot like you. So the lead character of my stories is an alien. And the reason that I chose the alien, because as the alien travels across the planet and sees all these differently dressed people, and at each stop the alien points out, if I could just read maybe one of the pages from the book, the alien, he stops and he says, "Oh, who is this strange man I see? He does not look like me. He has a fuzzy beard with cords on his head and a hat that is gold, green and red." So then on the next page, you will see the response, and it says, "Who am I? Is that what you said? I am a Rasta and my hair is called dreads. I laugh, I cry, I play and give hugs, and all I want is peace and love." And that similar theme carries on throughout the whole book as he meets a lady who's dressed in black from head to toe, and she only has her eyes on show. And again, she will explain that she has a burqa on her head, but she also laughs, cries, plays and hugs, and all she wants is peace and love. So the alien goes and he meets all these different religions who are all different, but they all then share their similarities. And right at the last page of the book, or second to last page, the alien makes a really good realization. And he says, who are all these strange people I see? They actually look like each other and not like me. They all have 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 arms and 2 legs, 10 fingers, 10 toes, 1 nose and a head. And then they explain, we're the sons and daughters of friends of Earth. We laugh, we cry, we play and give hugs, and all we want is peace and love. So the idea was, it was explaining, but I wanted to make sure that anybody of any culture looking at this book felt identified, but also had an opportunity to learn about someone else. And I felt that was a key thing that was missing from the books that I had access to on my shelf. So if any of your listeners do have any more suggestions of material that has that level of inclusion, I would love if they could leave comments on your page and let us know, because I think stories like this are really, really needed.
Yeah.
Especially now.
Yeah. One of the things that we've done a lot of here on the shows, we've talked to a lot of different authors about representation and about how important it is for kids to see themselves represented in pages of books. But one of the things that I've felt just as strong about is, as important as it is for a kid with dreadlocks to see himself on the pages of books, it's also important for a kid with who doesn't have dreadlocks to see that dreadlocked kid on the pages, to see somebody who looks different, so that way we can relate to each other. It's important to have that self pride and to see yourself and to know that you are valued in that way. But I think it's also really important to take it the next step and to share, so that a kid who grew up in an Irish family sees kids who grew up in a Jamaican family and a Chinese family and an Italian family, and then gets that message that we are all one. We all want to love and get along with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, my own experience of kind of the sheltering of a child. So me and my son were traveling to London on a train, and a Muslim lady had got on in her full ceremonial dress, and my son actually grabbed hold of my leg and said, "Oh, a monster."
Oh, no.
And I was really taken back by that, because I thought, why don't you know that this is a Muslim lady? And then I explained to him, and I was like, no, this is a Muslim lady, this is how she's dressed. And he goes, oh, I've heard about Muslims, they're bad people. So again, and he was only 5 at the time, these were not conversations that we were having at home, but through his experiences and interactions, these were information that he was picking up and collecting. And where we are now in society, and with all the divide that's happening, I feel that a lot of that is those errors. We're seeing these differences, they're not being explained, and we're just taught kind of the sound bites from the media, and we put all that information together, and it just creates this massive hate and fear. And obviously where we're at today with the state of the racial affairs in the country, both in the US and the UK, because it is equally as bad here. It's not exposed as much.
I have to thank you. The story that you just told, it took a fair amount of courage for you to tell. And, you obviously didn't raise your son to be afraid of somebody who is different, to be afraid of somebody who's wearing a burqa, but to be honest with us, to say, hey, it wasn't my intent, but all these other outside influences, my kid picked this up. And I think that's something that we also have to realize as parents, is that, we are the most important teacher for our kids. We're the first and most important teacher, but we're not the only teacher. And these days they're getting a lot of lessons from places we probably don't want them to get lessons, from the internet, from friends, from media that they're exposed to that we're not even aware of. So I want to take my hat off to you for having the courage, because I think that's something that happens with every family. And it's important for us to be open about that.
Yeah, because up until that age group, your child is literally is put in the bubble that you create. So if your family network doesn't have people of that diversity within there, your child just doesn't go off by themselves to meet these individuals. Mm-hmm. And usually books is one of the greatest ways that a child who is not in an environment to see those things can actually have that experience and an avenue to feel as though they've travelled without actually leaving the home. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's really, really important for more messaging like this to be in books. If we can get them into cartoons, that's even better. But for the time being, because for an adult reading my book, a lot of adults have said to me, do you know what? Sometimes we just need a gentle reminder. And actually reading to a child, it just made me think again mm-hmm. about some of the things that I've built up over the last few years with everything that's gone on in the world, mm-hmm. of what I know about people and what I've allowed the media to tell me about people. So I think it's also, children's books are always a good way as a reminder to adults mm-hmm. of some of life's most valuable lessons. I always find that myself from reading with my children.
Absolutely. And you're doing a lot to really bring this message to life in many different ways, not through just Dressed in Peace. And I want to talk about that. But before I do, I just want to know where the inspiration for that title, Dressed in Peace, it's when I heard it, like this light of happiness went off inside me. It's just such a perfect title. Was it one, did it come to you in a flash, or was it something that you like labored over for weeks?
It just came to me. I can't tell you the point at which it came to me, but it was just something. I just remember saying it out loud. I was looking at the images one day and the words, and I just like, dressed in peace. Everybody here is dressed in peace. And although it sounds a lot like the words rest in peace, which are obviously sometimes can be associated with a negative emotion, it still had the same resonance. And I don't know, it just stuck with me, and it just perfectly described what I wanted to say about the way that the people had presented themselves. However you see it, they are just dressed in peace. Mm-hmm. This is the clothes that they wear for worship, the clothes that they wear when they're at their most purest and their most honest. It's peaceful, and I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, and I am not an expert on religion, but I've actually studied world religions, and I've done it a lot. It wasn't just that one course in high school that a lot of people take. I've done a lot. I've studied world religions. I've studied religions individually, and the bottom line is they are, for the most part, they share that core tenet at the very core. It's love, it's peace, it's getting along. And I know you can pick and choose a sentence out of the Quran, a sentence out of the Bible, a sentence here, a sentence there. But when that's not fair to do. You need to take the religion, the teachings as a whole. And as a whole, the core teachings of all those religions, it's all about love and getting along and just building the world that our Creator intended for us. Now, I said that you're doing more than just, writing Dressed in Peace is an awesome thing, but you really have a mission to help unheard author voices be heard. So kind of talk a little bit about your company, Paper Pages, please.
Yeah. So Paper Pages, I literally founded Paper Pages during the process of creating Dressed in Peace. And it was once I had realized that actually I had such a great story to tell from my experiences, and was fortunate enough to have the articulacy to be able to create that many people from where I grew up with had the same experiences and the same stories, that may not necessarily have had the same level of articulacy that I possessed. And I felt like it was a fantastic way for me to do something that I love, which is reading, writing and books, but also for young people, for minority voices that may only see sports and music and acting as an avenue to showcase talent and creativity, that actually books can be really accessible. And a lot of the time, the big publishing houses, they act as barriers and deterrents for a lot of young people as seeing that as really being something they can pursue. So it was literally, right, that is my motivation. I'm going to take everything I've learned on this journey and allow others to experience it, because that moment you get that brown envelope with your book inside it is honestly it feels the same as when I held my children, I'll be honest, for the first time. It's one of those moments. And if I could give that and share that moment with others, as well as inspire through the actual stories, I just thought, there isn't really anything greater that I feel that I could be doing in terms of my contribution to the planet. So, yeah.
That's really wonderful. I'm wondering, I'm imagining that you never dreamed of becoming a publisher.
No, my background, I actually work for the government in my day-to-day job, and I support people. In America, it would be called the welfare system. So I support people who are considered job seekers, and I also train the staff that interact with them, just on methods of motivating and encouraging people to return into employment. I was actually inspired by a competition on TV. And they were offering a very lucrative prize. I remember it was one morning I was getting ready for work, as you do, very unhappy about the fact that I had to go to work that day. So when I saw the prize money, I was like, this is my get out of work free card. So that literally said, okay, the school want me to write an idea. They're paying money for it. It's all go. But then upon reading the terms and conditions of the competition, I actually realized that there was definitely a chance of winning, but had I have not won, there was no rights to my story once I sent it in. And I felt so strongly about the story that it superseded the cash prize and led me down this avenue of publishing books. So after reading the terms and conditions and seeing that actually that wasn't the way to get the story out, I decided to find out how I get the story out. And once I found that out, it was like, right, I'm letting others in on this secret. Let's get your stories out.
That's really wonderful. It reminds me of my daughter, who was, when she was in high school, and someone asked her she was going to be working for someone, and someone gave her a contract for the job, and she took it home to read it, and the boss said, why are you going to read that? And she's like, I'm going to go into business. Of course I'm going to read a contract before I sign it.
But you'll be surprised at the amount of people that just don't.
Absolutely. I think that's what most people who make contracts count on.
Yeah.
But that's, I think I love that story because it shows you, like, there was that motivation. This is the big cash prize. And I really think I have a chance to win it. But if I go for that, I won't be able to share this story. And this story is more important. Getting this story out is more important than that cash prize. And I think that's wonderful. And I think the fact that you took the time to read that contract and to think about the ramifications and implications tells me that Paper Pages is going to be a very successful business. And if there are authors out there looking to work with a young publishing house, that you might be the way to go. If there is somebody listening to the show who's interested, are you accepting submissions from folks?
We are always accepting submissions, and one of the things that we prize ourselves on doing that is different to other publishing houses is we won't just send you a rejection. It will always be with a why, so that you can then go away, you can work, and you can come back again. Because what I did find, and through speaking to other people that had previously tried to become authors, is that rejection, it can sometimes be the end of a lot of people's careers. And that is so disheartening to hear, because there are probably so many stories that have never been told, that should have been told, but just may not have been fitted for the person that you sent it for. So I just wanted to give people that encouragement as well, that even if you decide that actually I'm going to go and publish myself somewhere, I'm going to find out how to do it like you did, but can I get a bit of advice? Can you consult me? Then those are all services that I'm open to sharing with people. So if you follow any of my social media platforms, my email address is attached to all of them. You can drop me a line. The website is currently going through a reconstruction as we've got so much more titles to add to it. So once that's up and running, I will be hitting you up, and then you can share it again with your followers. But my social medias is a good place to start at the time being.
So tell everybody what those social media addresses are.
So my social media is at Paper Pages Ltd, and that is all, and that's on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Awesome.
The same handle on all.
I'm really excited, and you're very wise. Get that one consistent name. Unlike me, I have a couple of different names on social media. But I'm really excited. We're different generations. I told you a little bit about my high school experience in dealing with some terrible race riots that occurred through the desegregation process in the 70s here in Boston. It's something that shook me to my core when I was a kid. It's something that I've been working on in various ways to find ways for us to come together. You're much younger than me, but you've also experienced this. Is there hope? Is there a way that my grandkids, that your grandkids are going to, are they going to find this world that we dream of, where we can all be judged for the persons that we are?
I always believe there's hope, because if there's no hope, then there's no reason to fight. There is always hope. And I think that now is a good time because we're having the conversations. Mm-hmm. As uncomfortable as they are, I think that's what really, really needs to happen. Conversations need to be had. People need to feel comfortable enough to ask the questions. And I think that goes for all races. So it's not just those that are guilty of being racist, the ones that are receiving it. We all have to be open-minded and honest and open to answer questions, because like we started off saying, a lot of what's happened is through the fear and the fear of the unknown. And the only way that we're going to start reversing that is if we start having these questions answered and having the exact information and not misinformation, which has been happening. So there's always hope. As long as our children are able to communicate their feelings and express them with each other and be heard, and we keep creating those spaces, eventually we will get to the places we want to be.
Well, I am really excited. I am so happy that you had a chance to speak with us today. Everybody check out Dressed in Peace, and also check out Paper Pages Limited on all those social media platforms, so you can connect with our guest, Nye Jones. Nye, yeah. Thank you so much for being part of the show.
And thank you so much for having me. This was a really, really fun conversation to have. Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be our friend, Heather Montgomery. She is going to be back to talk about her brand new book. You don't want to miss it. We love Heather Montgomery. She is our queen of yucky science. That's the next edition of the podcast. If you are an author of a great children's book, you might want to check out our Certified Great Read program. It is a wonderful way to let families know that your book is worthy of their consideration. Check it out today at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very, very wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Nye Jones. Please be sure to check out Dressed in Peace, and also check out Paper Pages Limited on social media. I also want to thank my incredible team, starting with my producer, my amazing producer, Fatima Khan, my awesome author ambassador, Peggy Cotto, my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, but most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for keeping the dream alive that one day we will all be able to live and be dressed in peace. And thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.